sinners, and saints. Dust off those horns and halos. It's time for Alan After Dark.
One of the funniest and most peculiar things about us humans is how we let gossip really control a lot of our lives. Now, sinners and saints, you all know that I say and do enough stupid things every single day that you really don't have to make up anything about me. I give you enough material to work with that you can spread from sea to shining sea. You have no need of making a false narrative. But for some reason, so many people really do have to make up stories. I give you plenty to work with. Go with that and you'll do fine. I promise. But we are these interesting creatures, aren't we? How we can become consumed with what everybody thinks about us. And then there are some that really want everybody talking about them. They want all the attention. They want every aspect of people's conversation to be about them. That's great too if that's what you're really into. I don't see that much fun in that, but I do enjoy being the life of the party. And I do have a big mouth and I don't shut up. And I'm okay when somebody tells me to shut up. It's okay, depending upon the context of them telling me to shut up. Okay? But why do people have to make up stuff? If you overhear something, what is the old saying? Believe half of what you see and none of what you hear? Or do I have that backwards? I mean, either way, it's truthful. You're not getting the full scope of the story. Seeing an incident happen doesn't mean that you know the entire situation. You don't know the full aspects of what's happening. And the same thing with hearing stuff. You'll only hear part of the story. And that's really a waste of time, don't you think? But if you just mind your business, well, okay, I'll just say this. You might hear stuff and you might see stuff, but maybe you should just keep it to yourself, at least for now, right? Don't you agree? Maybe you don't. Well, how y'all doing, you bitches and whores and sluts and skanks and pole smokers and ass munchers? Y'all doing okay? I hope you're doing well and feeling sexy and groovy and ready to party the night away or chill at home or whatever you want to do. I have no qualms either way. I'm, as always, excited about happy hour and looking forward to hanging with friends and enjoying conversation and time together, just enjoying that camaraderie that I share with them. And I'm looking forward to seeing some people that I haven't seen in a while. And I hope to see some fresh dick too. It was so funny. I was grocery shopping and this guy was approaching, pushing his cart from the other direction. And we sort of made eye contact. And he did look at me with some horror because I'm pretty sure I looked worse than Jason in the Friday the 13th movies without his hockey mask. It was a horrid, rough night last night. A little too much tequila. Or was it agua? Or was it Jaeger? As in Jägermeister. Anyway, one of the three. I can't remember right now. But there was just something about him that just absolutely turned me on. And if he had offered me a come hither look, I would have followed him to the men's room and we would have gotten jiggy with it right there. I would have sucked that dick and had at it. Licked him from stem to stern. There was just something about him. He wasn't like he was the most attractive man in the world. I mean, let's face it, none of us are when compared to Henry Cavill. But you know that feeling, when you meet someone and there's just something about them, that chemistry that they seem to exude, this sort of, physical, chemical scent they give off. Just the confidence that in the way that they carry themselves. Those things can be quite appealing. I know that I haven't mentioned the Mohawk Man in a long time. And the main reason is because technically he doesn't exist anymore. The one that did have the Mohawk and the amazing tattoo on the side of his head, he combs his hair down. He has a full head of hair. He dresses more businesslike and isn't the same guy that he was. He doesn't seem to have the same magnetism. He doesn't carry himself the same way. He doesn't have that appeal that he did before. And I wonder, it's like the change in how he looks changed that chemical composition with him. It made him virtually a completely different person. He doesn't seem as confident. He doesn't seem as arrogant. He is not as tempting, at least for me. And it almost seems like I just disproved my own theory about that chemical attraction, that something that you can't put your finger on. Because apparently for him, his stimulus to me was both visual, especially visual, more than chemical, even though, if you remember, I walked by him very closely and got a whiff of his masculine scent that almost sent me into cardiac arrest. But now it's like he's changed. I think he is moving up in the company, and he has to, I think by choice, dress and look differently. I think that's kind of sad, but it's a fact whether you like it or not. Keeping secrets can really get you a long way, especially when it comes to secret rendezvous, if you know what I mean. I was explaining to one of my close straight friends about, well, my past. And no, I didn't have to use penicillin to get through it. But there have been some prominent people that I have had sexual encounters with that I will take those adventures to my grave. I'll never share them with anyone. And I know that some of them have shared that information with some of their friends. How do I know that? Because those friends came a knocking as well. They wanted a little afternoon delight. Oh, God, did I just say that? That makes me want to hurl. Ugh. I remember that was on an episode of Schitt's Creek when they caught David with that hot guy in the middle of the day. And his dad said something about enjoying afternoon delight. And they were like, don't ever say that again. And having said that out loud myself, I get it. I know what they mean. Oh my gosh. But I guess, unlike Blanche Devereaux, I won't get as much satisfaction knowing what I know about certain people that I'm taking to my grave with me. I could be Blanche Devereaux and tell the world everything I know and who they were, but I kind of like having those memories to myself. I kind of like being the only one other than them to know. There's something very erotic about that. There's something very exciting about it. I've seen them in a room, at a party, or at the bar, and we exchange a knowing glance. And that can be as arousing as anything you can think of. It honestly can. And that usually happens at some of the bigger parties that we attend. I guess I could say that I can be a little catty and a little bit judgmental about certain people. But there is, during Christmas time, there is this special ball that you can go to. You have to pay, I think it's $100 a couple, at least $50 per person, maybe even $75 per person now. And people are in black tie, and it's supposed to be for charity, and they all look good, and they're at this fancy location, and it's catered and bartenders, and it comes off as a little snooty. It comes off as arrogant and cocky, and that's all well and good. And I may sound like a bitter little bitch, but I've opted not to go to it just because I don't want to go. I'm not big on dressing up like I used to be. And they can do their glamour shots and act like they're better than everybody else. And not all of them do. Don't get me wrong. I have a lot of great friends who go to that and enjoy it, and bless their hearts. I'm so happy for them for that. But I'm talking about the ones that I know that I have a secret with. And sometimes I just feel like, you know what? I just want to wipe that damn smug look off your face. Oh, Lord, though. I think it was something the vampire Lestat once said, evil tastes better. Maybe that's where my thinking comes from. There's something about holding that sword of Damocles over their heads, giving them the look like, don't forget what we did 12 times years ago and recently. That sounds stupid, I know. But nobody has anything to worry about with me when it comes to sexual escapades. I don't share those things with anybody, and I never will, except for you guys here on the podcast. But I've said it before, you can't know exactly who I'm talking about unless I say it specifically. And as I always say, the names are changed to protect the innocent, the guilty, and the satisfied. So anybody who criticizes me in public, well, they're telling on themselves. Do you all ever think about some of your old crushes and maybe even your hookups and wonder where they are now? If you remember on the very first episode of Alan After Dark, way back when, I told you all about my awakening, my realization that I was gay. And it was on the school bus. And Grady Thompson, he was standing, and with the movement of the bus, he wound up pressing his dick into my shoulder. And that's what sparked that epiphany that I was gay. Well, I think about him quite often, and I can picture that moment still to this day. And I wonder what he's doing now. How is he? Is he alive and well? Is he married? Does he have children and grandchildren? And if you remember, he was the one that got on the bus one day, and he was black and blue. He was bruised, and it was his father who had done it. And nobody did anything. Nobody called the police. His father got away with it. And I hope that he got out of that and did not become a reflection of his own father. But he looked so damn good in those jeans that morning. And when he pressed that dick up against my shoulder, God. Yeah, it was boner time the whole trip. You could untuck your shirt and hide or put your books in front of you. That's what I had to do for a little bit after getting off the bus that morning. But, it was worth it. Some of the people that I had crushes on and attractions to, believe it or not, they still live in the same town, and they live in the house that their parents lived in, where they lived as a child. And it's not too hard to keep track of them. There's very few people from that far back that I had crushes on that moved away. They're still in the area where we grew up. That's great. It's great for them if that's what they want. That closeness to family. Of course, most of them, well, probably all of them that I had crushes on are hetero. So they didn't have any really true reasons to want to leave other than a better way of life, better odds at getting a job, convenience, opportunity, entertainment, etc. In the small towns that we came from, there's nothing. You can watch the grass grow, watch wildlife, which can be fun. But other than that, the nearest movie theater is like 40 minutes away. I'll say 30 minutes away. And if they want to see some of the stars in concert, pop stars, country stars, whatever, they have to drive to one of the two big cities in the area. And that's up to an hour or an hour and a half away. But that's their business. I do remember one of the guys that I think I've never mentioned before, and let's call him Robert. And Robert he was a very down-to-earth, the average kind of guy that almost has like a farmer's build to him, but he's not so rural in the way he looks and the way he acts. But there was just he was just so nice looking. You just felt comfort in looking at him. And he was just this great guy who was always friendly to everybody. And I just remember one time in PE, I got to see him in his underwear all the time. But one day, for whatever reason, he was playing with himself. I mean, just giving that dick a tug through his jeans, just working it left and right. Obviously, I still remember that. But his personality just enhanced his cuteness. And he still lives in the same hometown. He married the prettiest girl in town, and nobody saw that coming. But it's just his way. He was a decent guy. He didn't judge or behave any differently with anybody else. And yeah, if he had been gay, I'd have been happy. I would have married him. I would have. He had the dark hair, and it was parted on the side, and he had this full face and these beautiful green eyes that twinkled. He was just an attractive guy as a whole package. Now, I know a lot of the girls didn't think he was all that, but I sure did. And of course, it didn't hurt seeing him that day playing with himself, and it also didn't hurt seeing him in his tighty-whities in the gym locker room. You remember when I talk about the straight bartender that his girlfriend at the time would be at the bar, sitting at the corner of the bar for every shift he worked. She was always there, and we were hooking up in the men's room for over like a 5 or 6 month period. Years later, I was just in the mall doing some shopping, and he walked by holding hands with a woman. I did a double take. I did. He looked as good as he always did. I think he probably got his act together. I think I've always called him Mike. I'm sure he got past the drugs and all that stuff. But if he had noticed me, which he didn't, but if he had of and he gave me the look, I would have disappeared with him right then to a men's room, whichever one was closer, J.C. Penney or Belk or Dick's Sporting Goods. But alas, he didn't notice me and just walked on by. I don't know that he looked happy, but you can't judge a book by its cover every moment of every day. It's been years since I've seen him. And it isn't always easy to read people that you haven't seen and interacted with for years. People do change. God knows men do. Well, in certain aspects, men do. But the core parts of men, yeah, men are pigs and we always will be. That's just a fact. Write it down. It can be quite fun when you bump into someone you haven't seen in years and you just hit it right off again, like no time has passed and everything's great and fun and enjoyable. People often ask, and I think we've probably talked about this on the podcast before, but anyway, we'll talk about it a little bit again. Would you go back and relive your life? And I think I've been pretty adamant. No, hell to the no. Do I want to go through that again? No. Would I make any changes? Yes, I would, but it would be later in life, not as a kid. I made the right decision to not come out of the closet. I made a very strategic decision not to do that, and it protected me and kept me safe until I could live my own life and come out and be who I am. I had nothing held over me, and I've always thought about the kids who either get outed or get caught somehow by a parent, or actually do want to confide in their parents and wind up being ostracized, thrown out of the house, abandoned. And that just is horrible. It's horrible when I think about, if you remember, the Pulse nightclub shooting where so many gay people were killed. Did you know that some of the parents never claimed the bodies of their children? How horrible are those people? If I believed in God, I would call that ungodly. That has got to be an abomination of the worst kind. You're so caught up in your own self and what you believe that you have lost your empathy, the love of your child. Well, you never loved that child then. You should not have children. If you would not claim your child's body after being murdered because they were in a gay nightclub on Latin night, seriously, and you think you're a good person? And that goes to anybody, any parent who would abandon their child. I know a lot of straight people, and I hope those of you who are listening, that if your child were to come to you and say, Dad, Mom, I'm gay, that you would say, thank you for telling me, and I'm glad you felt safe and confident enough to tell me. That points to a great parent who has a great relationship with their children. I guess you're thinking now, well, Alan, what about your relationship with your parents? Well, what do you think? It wasn't so great. I could not do it. I could not tell them then when I was young. And now it's just this we don't talk about it thing. And that's fine. My relationship works, and that's all I need. Once again, this is the South, and it's not necessarily about me being gay, but to them, it's about what everybody around them will think. They'll be the subject of gossip, and they'll be demonized and ostracized because people will blame them for their son being gay. And I can give you an example. There was an incident that happened, a confrontation within the family. And it involved an in-law, not mine, but an in-law for the whole family. That person's mother and brother came to my parents' house, causing a ruckus, an argument, and said my mother in particular should not be saying anything about their relative. They should be more worried about me. Immediately, my mom calls me, and I could hear the commotion in the background. And she says, they're going to start talking about you. Of course, I blew up. I drove all the way back home that evening, got in that person's face, and told them how dare they drag me into this whole confrontation that I had nothing to do with. But that's what people do in the South. Whatever ammunition they can use against someone, they will use it. Well, I just told this in-law relative that from that point forward, it didn't matter if everybody else in the world was lying. I would believe whatever they said if it was about that person. And they got really upset. But I just told them, you did this. I had nothing to do with this, and you dragged me into it. And it was very exasperating and frustrating with me that I could be pulled into something. It was a rumor. I know that. I know that I was always the subject of giggles and whispers behind my back. People were saying he's gay, even though they couldn't prove it. And so that's what people used against my family. So when I moved away, it was the best thing for me. I have never regretted leaving. I hate that area. You know, I think I've said before, it's one of the most beautiful areas in the world. But that beauty of nature disguises, camouflages all the ugliness of people. And there are a lot of ugly people there, inside and out. You don't call them hillbillies for nothing, you know?
Yeehaw!
When that confrontation happened and I was pulled into the middle of it, you can imagine how I felt. How I felt not only betrayed, but used. Like my feelings didn't matter at all. They were going to try to destroy my family because of me. And it was just a very low point in my life. And I remember not spending much time with them after that for a long, long time. And I remember even Christmases being very awkward with them there. They had the nerve to show up, and it was pretty bad for many years. And now we're civil to each other, but it won't be ever the same. I will never trust someone who would allow their family to drag me into something that I had nothing to do with. It gives you a taste of how blackmail and extortion really do work. I kind of crack up because I believe that now they think that that's all in the past and I don't remember it. But I think you guys can tell, I forget very little. I remember almost everything. There'll be little bits and pieces of things that I might get slightly wrong, but I pretty much remember. Especially I remember things that are so detrimental to my own existence. I will never get over how I felt and how I was treated. I just learned how to pretend, and I guess you could say, what is it that the Wicked Witch of the West said? I'll bide my time. Because everybody who throws stones like that, they all live in glass houses. It's just almost comical that they don't see how things like that can come back to bite you on the ass and punch you in the dick or bite you on the titty, whichever way you want to look at it. Did I ever tell you when I had the conversation with my brother and my sister-in-law? Well, they asked me, and I said, yeah, I'm gay. And the first thing she asked me was, well, do you have AIDS? My answer was, no, I do not have HIV or AIDS. But that's the kind of things you have to deal with when you're gay and you're just trying to live your life. Some people you feel safe enough to tell them, and then they burn you. It happens. It does. And at the time that that conversation finally happened, there was nothing that they could do to me financially anyway. The only thing that I would have lost would have been a family. And you know what? If that's how they would treat me, then so be it. I don't need that kind of family. In the gay community, we choose our family, and I've chosen very, very well, most of the time. I don't want this to be all gloom and doom, because I don't feel that way. I am a survivor. All of you in the gay community, you're survivors. We are more adept at taking care of ourselves, and we should be proud of that. I have a happy life. And I want everyone to have a happy life. I just wish people could leave people alone. It would be that simple. Let everyone live their lives. It doesn't impact yours. And let us exist as we always have and always will. Just the thought that people, even in my own family, dwell on what I do in bed or a men's room, seriously, makes you wonder, doesn't it? But that's another reason for me to continue doing Alan After Dark, that I get to talk to you all and give you an example of a person who is a bit carefree, some might say careless, but to let you all know that you can have your life and enjoy even things like grocery shopping, looking at hot men's or hot women if that's what you're into, just indulging your own inner fantasies. And it's nobody else's business. The guy at the grocery store, it was an exchange, a glance, and a look, but that was it. And he went on with his day, and I went on with my little fantasy. No harm, no foul, right? Right. And I think that I am a good example of a person who did beat the system, did outlast the haters, the bashers, etc. And you all know, we all know, I still have haters, I still have bashers, but they really can't do anything to me. Sticks and stones, break bones, but names will never hurt me. We'll go with that. That's how it works for me. Knowing that you live rent-free in some people's heads, there's a satisfaction to that, don't you think? Knowing that they can't stand the thought that you're more successful than almost anyone else in the family. That's kind of like the kick I get out of it, because they do get angry at my success because they want to believe that God punishes gay people and we can't be happy. We lead these tortured lives of suffering and angst and anguish. And when they see us and we're happy, they just are beside themselves. It's hilarious sometimes to think about that. It's almost like they actually have a crisis of faith. Like, wait a minute, doesn't the Bible say they're supposed to suffer and be in agony all the time and never be happy, never have a good life? And when they see that we are, they really don't know what to do, except for say things like, well, you're going to hell anyway, so you might be prosperous and successful and happy now, but you'll suffer for eternity. And I just have to roll my eyes and scoff at them and say something like, did you vote for Trump? You did? And you think that piece of orange shit is going to get to heaven? Well, honey, if you think that piece of shit can get to heaven, none of us have anything to worry about. So put that in your pulpit and smoke it, bitch. Whew, Lord have mercy. What an episode this has been. I hope you've enjoyed it and got a few chuckles and maybe some provocative thoughts. Hopefully you're not bummed out or feeling sad, because that is not my intention. I hope that you're enjoying our time together, because I always do. And I also hope that you remember to take life by the balls and be real. We'll see you soon.